Welcome to Sleep Theater Radio, where we bring you immersive tales accompanied with ambient rain and thunder. Tonight's story drifts toward the far edge of known space, where abandoned beacons still pulse through the dark and the silence between stars grows deep enough to swallow entire crews. On an uncharted moon, a salvage team answers a lone distress signal, a signal that should have faded years ago. What they discover beneath its frozen stone is not a survivor, but a hunger older than the caves themselves. These explorers step into tunnels shaped by shadow, silence, and something that learned to hunt long before humanity left Earth. Most who descend will never return, and the one who does will emerge carrying the echo of something that refuses to let go. Settle in as the storm rolls outside your window. Let the rain guide your breathing, and let the thunder dim the world around you. We are about to descend into the void, a place where every whisper follows you back to the surface. If you enjoyed tonight's tale, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1, The Beacon. Ryland Graves was elbow deep in a faulty coolant regulator when the Horizon Rook intercepted the signal. He didn't notice it at first. None of them did. It bled into the long-range scanners as a faint, pulsing tone barely louder than the vessel's ambient hum. Only when the bridge lights shifted to amber did the crew lift their heads. Ryland wiped coolant from his gloves and stepped toward the diagnostics console. The display flickered, stuttering between status readouts until the alert stabilized. Captain Mara Holt stood rigid in the center of the bridge, her arms crossed and her jaw tight as she watched the waveforms scroll across the screen. "Sarah, tell me that isn't what it looks like," she said quietly. Sarah Lynn, their communications lead, lowered her headset and fine-tuned the gain. She listened for several seconds, filtering static and isolating the signal's decayed carrier wave. "It's a beacon," she said. "Automated, at least 20 years old, maybe more. Hard to lock down through the interference." She hesitated as the pulse repeated. "It's a distress call." From the weapons station, Jace Thorne let out a dry breath. "Perfect," he said. "Another ghost hunt on a nameless rock, filled with bodies nobody wants to claim." Dr. Alira Vance ignored him as she examined the raw telemetry Sarah projected to the central display. "The pattern repeats every 6 seconds, she said. "Emergency code C9. That's only used when all human life on board is presumed dead or compromised." Ryland felt a cold ripple crawl up his spine. C9 almost never appeared outside training manuals. Captain Holt turned toward the pilot's chair. "Quinn, take us in," she ordered. "Give me a visual." Quinn Merrick eased the thrusters forward with a reluctant sigh. "Why do the bad ones always show up during my shift?" he asked. Dimitri Solon, their heavy engineer, leaned in the doorway with his arms folded. "Because you complain the most," he said in a low rumble. The Horizon Rook dipped through a thin haze of cosmic dust, and the uncharted moon slid into view. It was small and desolate, its surface carved with jagged ridges and deep fractures that looked like old celestial wounds. The sun washed across it at a severe angle, leaving most of the terrain drowned in shadow. The beacon strengthened. Sarah magnified the origin point. "It's coming from inside one of the major fault lines near the equator," she said. "Looks like wreckage, possibly a survey craft." The image sharpened, revealing a broken vessel lodged sideways across a rocky outcrop. Half of the hull remained intact. The other half was ripped outward, as though something had torn itself free from inside. Dr. Vance inhaled slowly. "That wasn't a crash," she said. "It was breached." Jace crossed his arms as he stared at the display. "Fantastic. Maybe whatever did that is still waiting for a second course." Captain Holt shot him a sharp look. "Our job is to confirm the fate of the crew, secure their data, and file the report," she said. "We don't pick and choose our rescues." Ryland forced himself to stay silent, though every instinct in him wished she would make an exception this time. Something about that moon, the torn hull, the monotone beacon, felt wrong down to the marrow. Sarah glanced up from her console. "Captain, there's a partial audio file embedded in the transmission." Captain Holt nodded once. "Play it." The speakers crackled to life. A wash of static filled the bridge before a voice emerged, strained, broken, barely recognizable as human. "We can't see it. Moves in the stone. Don't come down here. Don't. A scraping noise followed. Then a short, sharp scream. Then nothing. Jace leaned back stiffly. "Nope," he said. That wasn't a survivor. That was someone being eaten. Captain Holt raised a hand to quiet him. We're landing, she said firmly. Prep your gear. Jace muttered a curse, but obeyed. Rylan felt the subtle shift in gravity as Quinn began their descent. Shadows from the moon's fractured surface stretched across the viewport like claws. The landing struts deployed with a metallic groan before the ship settled against the stone. Captain Holt addressed them with practiced authority. We move in pairs. We keep comms open. We retrieve data, check for survivors, and leave. No heroics. Rylan secured his helmet and checked his wrist scanner. His chest felt tight. Something deep inside whispered that they were already too late, and that anything capable of tearing open a survey craft wouldn't let them walk away. Dimitri clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. Breathe, Rylan, he said. Just another day on the job. Rylan tried to smile, but it barely formed. Yeah, he said softly. Just another day. The airlock slid open with a gentle hiss. Cold, stale winds swept in from the barren surface. The sky overhead was a black expanse scattered with distant, frozen stars. The broken survey craft waited in the distance like a carcass left to rot. Captain Holt stepped onto the stone, her visor reflecting fractured moonlight. Eyes open, she said. Stay close. The crew of the Horizon Rook began their walk toward the wreckage. Behind them, the distress beacon continued its lonely rhythm. Every 6 seconds, a warning none of them should have ignored. Chapter 2. The Crashed Survey Ship. The wreck grew larger with every step the crew took across the barren surface. Rylan's boots pressed into brittle stone and powdered dust, each footfall swallowed instantly by the moon's suffocating quiet. Their suit lamps carved narrow paths of white through the dark, catching on twisted fragments of metal strewn across the impact site. Captain Holt slowed, raising a hand. Helmet lamps, up, she said. Keep scanning. Rylan adjusted his beam. Up close, the damage made no sense. Survey ships were built to withstand atmospheric turbulence and violent landings, yet the hull wasn't dented or crushed, it was split. Peeled backward in strips, as if something colossal had pushed outward from the inside. Dimitri crouched beside a jagged tier and traced the edge with his glove. Clean separation, he said quietly. No blast pattern, no heat. This is raw force, a lot of it. Dr. Vance dropped to one knee beside him. These shear marks aren't mechanical, she said. This is tearing, organic tearing. She took a slow breath. Something ripped its way out. Jace shifted uneasily, that rifle held tight across his chest. Even better, he said dryly. Something escaped. Enough, Captain Holt said, though the tension in her voice betrayed her own unease. We don't make assumptions. Sierra swept her rangefinder across the fractured hull. The black box signal is active, but the structural logs are incomplete, she said. Something wiped most of the internal data. Quinn remained near the rear of the group, visor tilting as he scanned the horizon. This silence feels wrong, he muttered, like the whole moon is listening. Captain Holt pointed toward a breach in the hull. We're going inside, she said. Jace, take point. Rylan, stay close. Rylan felt his pulse quicken as he followed her into the narrow opening. The ship's interior swallowed their light. Wires dangled from ruptured panels, swaying gently like shredded vines. The floor was warped, twisted upward in places where the structure had buckled. Alira's voice echoed softly from behind them. Look at these scorch marks, she said, and the blood. It's decades old, but it's everywhere. Rylan swallowed hard. Whatever happened here wasn't instant. The corridors curved inward toward the cockpit. Jace swept each dark alcove as he moved. Movement detectors are dead, he said. Life support too. This place is sealed in its own grave. Rylan's lamp passed across something half buried beneath collapsed ceiling plating. A welder. He knelt, brushing the dust away. The casing was cracked, and the trigger had been crushed as if someone or something had clamped down on it with overwhelming strength. Captain Holt crouched beside him. Standard issue for survey crews, she said. Whoever dropped it left fast. Or got dragged, Jace replied. They pressed deeper. The cockpit told the rest of the story. Chairs were overturned, consoles smashed, and the forward window was fractured inward. 3 jagged impact points, spiderwebbing across the glass. In the corner, beneath a collapsed rack of equipment, lay a body. Dimitri heaved aside the debris, revealing a desiccated corpse in a torn suit. The faceplate had shattered long ago. Bones showed through shredded fabric. The posture was twisted, arms reaching toward the corridor as if the person had tried desperately to escape. Dr. Vance lowered herself beside the remains. "Severe lacerations," she said softly. "Deep ones. These aren't weapon marks. Something with claws did this." Sarah's voice shook as she knelt near the body. "They must have triggered the beacon right before they died." Jace scanned the shadows. "Where is it now?" he asked. No one answered. Ryland moved to a cracked data panel and pried it open. "The core might still have something," he said. "Do what you can," Captain Holt replied. He linked his portable interface. The core flickered weakly, cycling through corrupted fragments. Static bled into scrambled video. Distorted voices broke apart mid-sentence. Then one file loaded, a final log. A trembling voice filled their helmets. "We found the tunnels, the readings were wrong, the heat signatures, the walls moved." A scraping sound cut the voice short. Then a whisper followed, faint, broken, barely human. "Don't let it touch you." The recording ended abruptly. Jace took 2 steps back. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." But Ryland didn't answer. His wrist scanner had detected something. A heat signature. Weak. Moving. Directly beneath the wreck. He slowly lifted his head. "Captain," he said. "Something's alive down there." Captain Holt straightened, hand drifting toward her sidearm. "Show me the reading," she said. Before Ryland could respond, a low vibration rippled through the fractured hull, subtle, distant, but unmistakably alive. Outside, the wind shifted across the barren terrain, and somewhere beneath the stone, something exhaled. Chapter 3, The First Descent. The entrance to the cavern opened beneath the crashed survey ship like a wound carved into the moon's cold surface. Ryland stood at the edge of the fissure, staring into a drop that fell at least 50 meters into shadow. His helmet lamp cut thin beams down the jagged stone ridges spiraling into the darkness, a natural staircase carved by time, or something far less patient. Sarah swept her scanner across the void. "I'm picking up residual heat signatures," she said. "Weak, but recent. Something moved through here." Jace tightened his grip on his rifle. "Remind me why we don't just tag this place as hazardous and fly home." Captain Holt didn't look at him. "We're following protocol," she said. "Pairs on descent, Sarah and Quinn stay topside and maintain comms. Dimitri, you're with Ryland. Jace, you're with Dr. Vance. I'll take point alone." Quinn shook his head as he watched her step forward. "Captain, we have no idea what we're walking into." "We do," Holt said. "A distress signal. Someone activated it. We confirmed the situation." Her visor angled toward the darkness. "We don't leave questions behind." Ryland knew better. This wasn't just protocol. Holt believed in the rescue mandate as if it were sacred. It made her a good captain. It could also kill her. Dimitri clipped a tether to Ryland's belt. "Stay close," he said. "And if you slip, I've got you." Ryland nodded, throat tight. They began their descent. Boots scraped over stone. Dust drifted down in slow spirals. The cavern walls pressed close around them, fur cold and streaked with mineral veins that glimmered faintly when their lights passed over them. The air grew heavy, as if the cave resisted their intrusion. Halfway down, Dr. Vance stopped and placed her palm against the rock. "Do you feel that?" Ryland paused. "Feel what?" She tapped the wall lightly. "Heat," she said. "And it isn't geothermal. Too localized." Jace shifted beside her, rifle angled toward the shadows. "Localized? As in something alive?" "Something warm," Alira replied. A faint vibration trembled beneath their boots. Ryland's breath hitched. "Did anyone else feel that?" "Yes," Captain Holt said. "Keep moving." They reached the bottom and fanned out. The cavern widened into a vast chamber, ceiling swallowed by darkness. Their helmet lamps revealed scattered rock formations, and twisted debris littered across the floor. The walls rose in rough layers, forming a labyrinth of branching passages. Dimitri knelt and lifted something from beneath a slab of stone, a helmet. Its visor was cracked, its interior stained with dried blood. Ryland felt his stomach turn. Alira examined it closely. "Survey team markings," she said quietly. "One of the original crew." Jace scanned the chamber's edges. "So where's the rest?" Ryland's scanner chirped. He tapped the display. "Captain, I'm detecting a biosignature." Holt stepped beside him. "Human?" "No," Ryland whispered. "Definitely not human, and it's moving." Before anyone could speak, a sound drifted through the cavern. Soft, fragile, a broken cry echoing off the stone. Alira's eyes widened. That sounded human. Jace shook his head slowly. "Not to me." The cry came again. Closer, thin and pained. "Help, please." Ryland froze in place. Something was wrong with that voice. Too hollow, too empty. Captain Holt raised her hand. Quiet, she said. Form up. Left tunnel. Dimitri hesitated. Captain, the distress log said the crew died decades ago. We verify everything, Holt said tightly. No assumptions. They moved toward the narrow tunnel. The path curved sharply, cutting visibility to a few meters. Ryland's heartbeat thudded against his ribs. Then his lamp caught something on the ground. Footprints. Old ones. Preserved by the cold cave air. A set of boots and a long drag mark trailing behind them. Someone had crawled or been pulled. Ryland knelt. This person was injured badly. Alira crouched beside him. They were trying to get away, she said quietly, from something. The cry returned, impossibly close now. Don't leave me. Ryland felt the temperature in his suit drop. The voice was ahead of them, yet his scanner still showed no human life. They entered the next chamber. The body slumped against the wall had been dead for decades, mummified, suit torn open, skull tilted back in a silent scream. Jace exhaled sharply. That voice isn't coming from him. Ryland confirmed the scan. Time of death matches the others. He's been gone 30 years. Captain Holt tightened her grip on her weapon. Something down here is imitating them. A low tremor rolled beneath their feet. Dimitri grabbed Ryland's arm. Movement, he said. Large movement. Behind us. Sarah's voice crackled through the comms. Captain, we're reading seismic activity topside. Something's shifting below your position. Holt turned toward the tunnel they'd entered through. Fall back, she said. Move. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The tunnel behind them dimmed. Something was approaching. Fast. And from the blackness beyond their lamps, the sound returned. Not a cry this time, but a slow, heavy exhale. Breathing. Wet. Animal. Jace lifted his rifle and braced. Captain, he said, voice tight. We've got incoming. A shape moved in the darkness, huge, silent, predatory, dragging claws across the stone as it closed in. Captain Holt raised her weapon. Lights up, she commanded. Weapons ready. The cavern swallowed their voices. The creature did not stop coming. Chapter 4. The Echo Hunter. The sound moved through the darkness like something alive. Ryland spun toward the tunnel behind them, helmet lights slicing through drifting dust. The beam showed nothing but empty stone, yet the slow, heavy breathing echoed again, deeper this time, close enough to feel. Jace raised his rifle toward the black. Captain, we need to fall back right now. Holt didn't hesitate. Retreat to the main chamber, she ordered. Move. The crew scrambled through the narrow passage, boots slipping against uneven rock. The walls trembled faintly with every drawn-out exhale from the unseen creature trailing them. Dimitri grabbed Ryland's arm and pulled him forward. Stay with me, he said urgently. They spilled back into the wide chamber at the base of the fissure, jagged stone formations rising overhead like the ribs of an ancient beast. Captain Holt signaled a defensive arc, and the team formed a semicircle facing the dark tunnel. Ryland's scanner chirped. He checked the readout and froze. Captain, he whispered, there's more than one. Dr. Vance inhaled sharply. How many? 3. No, 4, Ryland said. He stepped back as the signals shifted. They're circling us. Sarah's voice burst through the comms, brittle with panic. We're losing telemetry from your suits. Multiple contacts are converging on your position. Captain, get out of there. Before Holt could respond, claws scraped sharply across stone behind them. Then another scrape. Jace whipped his rifle toward the sound. Contact left. Something flickered at the edge of their lights, a pale blur clinging upside down to the ceiling, limbs contorting with insect-like precision before vanishing again. A guttural clicking echoed through the chamber. Ryland felt his pulse hammer. His throat tightened. What was that? Quinn asked from the surface. Dr. Vance's voice quivered. It moved like an arthropod, but at that size. A heavy impact cut her words short. A creature slammed into Jace from the darkness, sending him sprawling across the stone. Sparks burst from his suit as he skidded. His rifle clattered into a crevice, lost instantly. Jace! Holt shouted. He groaned, trying to rise. I'm fine. I can. A tall, sinuous shape dropped from the ceiling behind him. Ryland's breath froze in his chest. The creature stood in a warped silhouette, humanoid only in outline. Its frame was lean and elongated, every limb wrong in proportion and angle. Its skin was pale, stretched taut over a narrow structure. Its head was smooth and eyeless, the ears replaced by ridged slits that quivered with every sound. Its jaw unfolded slowly, revealing thin, needle-like teeth, and it breathed. slow, wet. Jace stared up at it in horror. "Don't move," Alira whispered, her voice cracking. The creature struck. It snapped forward with terrifying speed, claws clamping around Jace's helmet. His scream tore through the comms as the thing dragged him backward into the tunnel. Jagged stones scraped against his suit as it hauled him toward the darkness. His visor cracked under the pressure. Captain Holt fired 3 precise shots. The creature shrieked, a piercing whistle that stabbed through Ryland's ears, and retreated into the shadows, dragging Jace with it. "Jace!" Dimitri roared, lunging forward. Holt grabbed his arm with iron force. "Don't go after him." "He's alive," Dimitri shouted, panic rising. "No one survives if we split up," Holt snapped. Her voice trembled with restrained grief. "Stay with the group." The chamber fell silent, except for the fading sounds of Jace's struggle. Then nothing at all. Ryland stared at the dark tunnel. No movement, no body, no trail of blood, only the lingering echo of breathing far below. Sarah's voice cracked through the comms again. "Captain, more movement all around you. They're closing in." Dr. Vance pointed toward a narrow incline at the far end of the cavern. "Up there, that passage leads toward the fissure. Higher ground might restore our comms." Holt didn't hesitate. "Move out, stay tight, and watch every angle." The crew ran. Their helmet lamps bounced chaotically across the walls as they climbed. The stone shifted beneath Ryland's boots. Something massive moved beneath the surface, pacing them. A clicking chorus rose behind them, dozens of sharp, rhythmic sounds overlapping. Dimitri shouted, "Captain, they're coming!" Holt fired a flare downward. The bright blast lit the chamber below. Ryland saw them, pale bodies, too many limbs, skittering across rock like monstrous spiders. They poured from narrow tunnels, claws digging grooves into the stone as they advanced. "Faster!" Holt commanded. "Keep moving." Ryland's breath burned in his chest as he climbed the incline. Something scraped along the rock just behind him, close enough that he felt the vibration through his boots. Dimitri grabbed Ryland's pack and shoved him upward. Go. They reached a choke point, a narrow passage barely wide enough for one person. Holt squeezed through first. "One at a time. Don't stop." Ryland crawled in after her, elbows scraping stone. Dimitri pushed Alira behind him, then froze as Sarah's voice surged through the comms. "Captain, seismic readings spiking. Movement under your path." The stone shifted violently. Ryland felt it buckle. He scrambled forward, fingers clawing at the rock. Then the ground behind them cracked open. A creature burst upward with a shriek that made Ryland's entire body tense. Its claws wrapped around Dimitri's leg. Alira screamed. "Dimitri!" Dimitri roared as he braced against the stone, trying to pull free. Holt twisted in the tunnel, reaching back. "Dimitri, take my arm! I've got him!" Ryland shouted, grabbing Dimitri's glove. But the creature's strength was overwhelming. With one brutal jerk, it dragged Dimitri downward. Ryland's grip tore free. Dimitri's roar vanished into the depths as the creature pulled him into the chasm. The stone collapsed behind him, sealing the gap with a grinding roll. Silence consumed the cavern. Captain Holt's voice broke slightly, the first sound of fear Ryland had ever heard from her. "Climb," she whispered. The crew crawled upward through the narrowing chute, helmet lights flickering against the suffocating dark. Below them, the creatures began to climb too. Chapter 5. Splitting Up. The climb through the choke passage felt endless. Stones scraped against their suits, and every movement echoed upward like they were dragging themselves through the throat of some ancient creature. From below came another screech, sharp, metallic, and agonizingly close. The echo hunters were climbing after them. Ryland heard claws striking rock, getting closer, fast. Captain Holt emerged first into a wider tunnel. She turned, grabbed Alira's wrist, and pulled her through. Ryland scrambled out after them just as the passage behind them pulsed with another tremor. Sarah's voice flickered into the comms, thin and warbled. "Captain, your vitals are spiking. What's happening? Talk to me." "We lost Dimitri," Holt said, breath shaking, "and Jace. Something's hunting us." Sarah went silent. Then her voice broke softly. "I'm so sorry." Quinn spoke next, his tone unsteady. "Do you need extraction? Should I bring the shuttle to the fissure mouth?" "Negative," Holt said firmly. "Hostile lifeforms present. Stay in the ship and keep it ready." Ryland lifted his lamp toward the sloping tunnel ahead. "Captain, this path goes deeper." Holt checked her scanner. "There will be forks. We find another way up." They moved cautiously, steps quiet and deliberate. The tunnel walls were smoother here, unnaturally smooth. Rylan brushed his glove across the surface and felt the grooves. Claw tracks. Old ones. Alira touched the wall beside him. These things don't just pass through here, she said softly. They live here. Holt didn't reply. Then a voice drifted through the tunnel. Jace's voice. Help, Captain. Please. Alira covered her mouth. No, that's impossible. Rylan felt his stomach knot. They're mimicking him. Then shut off your comms, Holt ordered. We stay silent. Another voice followed, Dimitri's voice. Low, broken, twisted at the edges. Rylan, don't leave me. Rylan's breath caught. The imitation was chillingly accurate, but something lurked beneath it. A second tone, a hiss, like two mouths speaking at once. Holt placed a hand on Rylan's shoulder. They want us to turn back, she said quietly. We won't. A sharp clicking echoed from the darkness behind them, then another from ahead. Alira spun around. Captain, they're flanking us. Holt scanned rapidly, her voice grim. We move now. Pick a direction. 3 tunnels opened before them. Left, narrow, plunging deeper. Right, wider, sloping upward but coated with a wet sheen. Center, round and perfectly smooth, descending into a black void. Alira pointed to the right. Upward. That's our best chance. Rylan tested the slick ground. It's wet. If they chase us, we'll struggle to run. Left leads deeper, Holt said. Center is a hunting tunnel. We take the right. They entered the upward passage. The ground was damp and uneven, each step sending vibrations through the stone. Rylan felt movement beneath the surface. Multiple bodies shifting, stalking. The incline steepened. They climbed with both hands, water dripping from the ceiling in rhythmic taps that masked other sounds. Halfway up, they reached a collapse. Captain Holt swore under her breath. Blocked. The cave-in filled the passage completely. Rylan pressed his ear to the rock. It's thin, a meter or two, something forced its way through recently. Alira's voice trembled. The creatures? Rylan nodded. Most likely. Holt ignited her cutters. Rylan, with me. They carved away the smaller stones, careful not to collapse the entire wall. Rylan kept glancing down the incline, nerves prickling. Then he heard it. The clicking. Closer. He raised his weapon. Captain, they're coming. How many? Holt asked. Rylan's scanner flickered. 5, maybe 6. Alira backed up, shaking. We can't fight that many. Then we don't, Holt said. We break through before they reach us. The clicking multiplied, a rapid chorus. Pale shapes appeared at the bottom of the incline, limbs hooking into the stone as they climbed with terrifying speed. Captain, Rylan shouted. They're here. Almost through, Holt snapped. A chunk of stone came loose. Rylan shoved it aside, exposing a small, jagged opening leading into another passage. It's too small, Alira said. It won't be, Holt replied, wrenching another stone free. One at a time. The creatures were halfway up the slope now, dozens of pale limbs and eyeless heads emerging from the dark. Rylan pushed Alira through the gap. She squeezed through with a cry and vanished into the passage beyond. Holt, they're nearly here, Rylan shouted. Go, Holt barked. Rylan forced himself into the opening. His suit scraped against the jagged rock as he slid through. Alira pulled him fully inside the narrow passage. He turned back. Captain Holt was still outside, back turned, firing into the swarm. Holt, come on, Rylan shouted. She didn't move. She fired again, a precise burst that sent one creature tumbling. Another climbed over it. Holt yelled, seal the opening. What? No, Alira cried. That is an order. A creature lunged, grabbing Holt's arm. She tore free and shot it point blank, staggering backward. Rylan grabbed a heavy slab of rock. Captain, get inside! Holt looked at him, fierce, determined, unyielding. Seal it, Alira sobbed, helping Rylan drag the stone. The creatures surged upward in a wave of limbs and claws. Holt fired one last burst, then vanished beneath them as the slab slammed into place, sealing the passage. Her final scream echoed once. Then nothing. Silence settled over the tunnel. Alira collapsed to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. Rylan leaned against the stone barrier, breath ragged, hands trembling. Only 2 of them remained. Chapter 6, Buried Alive. The passage beyond the sealed rock fall forced Rylan and Alira into a crouch. Their helmet lamps swung in shaky arcs across jagged stone, illuminating barely a few meters before the dark swallowed the light again. Rylan kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting claws to tear through the sealed rocks where Captain Holt had been dragged away. But the tunnel behind them stayed silent, for now. Alira whispered, voice trembling so badly it barely formed words. We should have pulled her through. We could have. No, Rylan said softly. She saved us. If we had tried, all of us would be dead. Alira didn't answer. Her hands shook so hard her wrist lamp flickered. The tunnel widened as they moved deeper. Strange formations rose from the floor. Pillars of mineral fused into unnatural shapes. Deep claw marks scored their surfaces. Alira traced one with her glove. These tunnels weren't formed by pressure or water, she murmured. They're burrows, generational burrows. Rylan swallowed. Meaning? They didn't adapt to these tunnels. Her voice thinned to a frightened whisper. They made them. A cold wave passed through Rylan's chest. These creatures had lived in this labyrinth long before any human had ever mapped the system. A low vibration rumbled beneath their boots. Rylan froze. Alira, did you feel that? The ground trembled again, stronger this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. That's seismic movement, Alira said. But it's not natural. Something is. The floor split open. Rylan reached instinctively for the wall, but the stone gave way beneath them. The entire floor collapsed, dropping them into a roaring cascade of rock and darkness. Rylan hit a steep slope of loose shale and slid uncontrollably, scraping against jagged stone. Alira's scream echoed alongside him as they tumbled down the slick incline. They fell into a lower chamber with a brutal impact. The collision knocked the air from Rylan's lungs. His visor fogged as he gasped. Alira! He forced the breath out. Alira, are you okay? A soft groan answered him. Alira lay several meters away, gripping her shoulder. Her visor was cracked, but sealed. I'm okay, she whispered, just bruised. Rylan forced himself upright and swept his lamp across the chamber, and stopped breathing. This place was different. The walls were smooth and warm, pulsing faintly with heat signatures beneath the stone like living veins. The air, even through the suit filter, felt thicker, damp, and heavy. A soft clicking echoed above them. Rylan lifted his lamp toward the ceiling. Dozens of small, perfectly round tunnels punctured the stone overhead, a honeycomb network stretching in every direction. Alira, he whispered, voice hollow. We're in their nesting ground. Her eyes widened. We have to move. Now. Rylan helped her stand. They limped across the cavern, searching for any path that led upward. A narrow fissure on the far side slanted into darkness. Maybe a route out. Maybe a trap. Then a sound halted them both. A faint, trembling whimper. A human whimper. Rylan turned slowly toward a collapsed alcove. A human figure lay half buried in rubble, suit torn, visor shattered, body twisted against the stone. Alira gasped. Rylan, it's Jace. Rylan rushed to him. Jace! He knelt beside the broken form. Can you hear me? Jace stirred. A wet, rattling breath escaped through the cracks in his helmet. His voice was barely more than a gasp. Help! They dragged me. Alira knelt on the other side, shock brimming in her eyes. We saw you taken. We thought. Holt, Jace wheezed, coughing blood. Where is she? Rylan hesitated. She didn't survive. Jace nodded weakly. Figures. She always went first. A tremor rippled through the chamber. Jace's eyes widened with sudden panic. He turned his head toward the tunnels above. You have to leave, he whispered. Now. Rylan clutched his arm. We're not leaving you. Jace's hand tightened around Rylan's wrist with desperate strength. Listen to me. He forced his eyes open, meeting Rylan's through the cracked visor. They don't kill right away. Alira stiffened. What do you mean? Jace coughed, choking. They take you down here, somewhere deeper. They keep you alive. Rylan felt the words sink into him like cold knives. Why? Jace's voice broke. For the others to hear you. A tunnel above them vibrated. A pale limb slid out of the dark. Rylan's heart stopped. Jace's breathing quickened. They mimic you, after. Another limb appeared. Alira's voice cracked. Rylan, we have to go. Jace seized Rylan's wrist with a final surge of strength. Kill me. Don't let them. A creature dropped from the ceiling. Its claws clamped around Jace's torso in an instant. Alira screamed. Rylan, move. Rylan lunged, but Alira dragged him back just as the creature hauled Jace into the vertical tunnel. Jace's scream echoed through the chamber, then vanished. Silence followed, then faintly from the black tunnel above, Rylan, help. It wasn't Jace. It was perfect and horribly wrong. Alira trembled violently, tears streaking down the inside of her visor. Rylan, we have to go. Right now. Rylan stared at the tunnel for one agonizing heartbeat. Then he tore himself away. They limped into the fissure, running blindly into the dark as Jace's false voice echoed behind them, calling out from the depths of the hive. Chapter 7. Lures in the dark, Rylan and Alira pressed deeper into the fissure, moving as quietly as their suits allowed. The tunnel narrowed until only a single person could pass at a time, the stone brushing their shoulders as they edged forward. Their helmet lamps painted tight white arcs across wet walls that glistened like living tissue. Behind them, the chamber where Jace had been taken fell silent. Not a comforting silence. A warning, Alira whispered, her voice trembling. They know we're separated. They'll change tactics. Rylan nodded, the oppressive sense of being watched pressed against his back. It felt like the tunnel itself listened to their breaths and mapped their exact position. Keep your voice low, Rylan said. Whispers travel. They moved in cautious steps. Minutes stretched in uneasy quiet. Every fork they encountered led into deeper shadow. Rylan checked his scanner constantly, but the readings flickered and twisted as if the labyrinth distorted every signal. Heat signatures overlapped, tunnels looped back. Directional markers scattered like broken magnetic fields. Then the voices came. At first, a faint sob drifting through the stone. A woman's voice. Alira, help, please. Alira froze. Her breath hitched. That sounds like... Rylan grabbed her arm. It's not a person. It sounds like Sarah, Alira whispered. Exactly like her. The voice returned, closer now, trembling with pain. Please, someone. I can't move. It's dark. Alira's helmet shook. Sarah might have fallen in. Stop, Rylan said firmly. He leaned close until their visors nearly touched. Sarah is still on the surface. The creatures heard her over comms. They're copying her. Alira's voice cracked. They're learning our voices. Rylan didn't answer. The truth hollowed him out too deeply. A scraping noise echoed above them. Rylan shined his lamp upward. The ceiling was low, lined with round vents, the perfect size for the creatures to crawl through. He whispered, keep moving, slow and quiet. They advanced carefully. Then another voice drifted through the darkness. Male, weak, familiar. Rylan, his blood turned cold. It was Dimitri. Rylan, help me, please. Alira covered her visor with both hands. Oh no. Dimitri's voice came again, but misshapen. Some words dragged too long, others cut off abruptly. Rylan, don't leave. A distant clatter echoed behind them, followed by the skitter of claws. They were being herded. Move, Rylan whispered, pulling her forward. Another fork, 3 paths again. Left, hot readings, too dense. Center, cold stone, a dead end. Right, faint airflow and a subtle upward incline. Rylan pointed. Right, now. They hurried down the right corridor. The tunnel bent sharply, opening into a wider chamber with sloped walls rising like a massive throat. Alira whispered, what is this place? Rylan scanned the walls. Dense formation. Organic residue. A nesting path, he said. They've used it for generations. A faint clicking echoed above them. Rylan snapped his head upward. One of the creatures crawled across the ceiling, limbs fanning out like a pale spider. It moved silently except for the subtle tap of its claws. Alira trembled, weapon raised. Rylan, oh God, don't fire yet, he whispered. The creature paused directly above them. Its eyeless head angled downward. Nose slits quivered as it tasted the air. Then it made a sound, a soft, broken sob. Alira. Alira's breath shattered. That's my voice. The creature mimicked her perfectly this time. Alira, help me. Rylan raised his weapon. Back away. Slow. The creature dropped halfway down the wall in a blur of movement. Alira screamed. Rylan fired. The blast struck stone beside the creature, showering chips into the chamber. The creature recoiled with a sharp hiss and scuttled back up the wall, moving with nauseating fluidity. Rylan seized Alira's arm. Run! They sprinted toward the far exit. Claws clattered behind them. 2 creatures, maybe more. Their lights flickered as interference bled into their systems. Behind them, 1 creature screeched, blending seamlessly with Alira's voice. Rylan, don't leave me. Stop using my voice, Alira cried, her voice breaking. Stop it. Rylan rounded a sharp corner and skidded to a halt. The tunnel angled straight upward, a narrow vertical climb carved into the rock. A faint ledge glowed at the top. Alira, up! He pushed her toward the shaft. She scrambled upward, gripping cracks and seams. Rylan climbed after her, muscles burning. Below them, claws scraped against the stone. They were coming. Hurry! Alira shouted. Rylan reached the ledge as a pale hand seized the stone beneath his boot. He kicked it away and hauled himself over the edge. They collapsed, panting, helmets clinking against the rough floor. The tunnels behind them went silent. Too silent. Rylan forced himself to stand and shined his lamp forward. A narrow opening waited at the top of the platform, a break in the stone, just wide enough to slip through. Warm air flowed from it. Fresh air. Alira choked on a sob. Rylan, that feels like an exit. It might be, he said softly. A faint rumble rolled behind them. Then in the far distance a voice drifted through the tunnels. Holt's voice. Rylan, Alira, come back. Alira's tears spilled inside her visor. Rylan took her arm gently. That's not her, he whispered, and together they stepped into the passage ahead. Chapter 8. The Last Stand. The passage tightened around Rylan and Alira as they moved forward, narrowing into a curved tunnel that felt like the ribs of some buried leviathan. The air grew warmer, not clean, but circulating from a larger space ahead. Dust drifted on unseen currents, swirling in their helmet beams like drifting ash. Rylan checked his scanner. We're approaching a major chamber. Alira steadied her breathing. Major as in an exit chamber or a feeding chamber? Rylan didn't answer. The tunnel widened abruptly and dropped them onto a broad stone ledge. Their lights swept across a cavern of staggering size, so vast their beams couldn't reach the far walls. Stone pillars spiraled upward like the supports of an ancient cathedral. Streams of water flowed through carved troughs in the floor. Dozens of tunnel mouths fed into the chamber from every direction. It was a nest, a crossroads, a fortress carved by predators. Alira whispered, there must be hundreds of them. Rylan forced himself to swallow. Stay low, move quietly. He scanned the cavern floor far below. Shadows shifted. Pale limbs slipped between jagged rock. Dozens of creatures, possibly more, patrolled the darkness in erratic, insect-like patterns. Alira gripped his arm suddenly. Rylan, look. He followed her gaze. Across the chamber, half buried beneath a rock slide, a metal structure leaned on its side. Dented. Partially collapsed, but unmistakable. The survey team's shuttle, Rylan said. They dragged it down here. Alira's eyes widened. If the fuel cells are intact, we can detonate them, Rylan said. Take out the nest. Clear a path to escape. Or kill ourselves instantly, Alira murmured. Rylan exhaled shakily. We're out of options. A sudden clicking echoed from the tunnel behind them. Alira spun around. Rylan, they're here. Rylan looked back up the tunnel. Two creatures crawled along the ceiling, limbs splayed like pale bats. Their heads twisted in unnatural angles, sniffing the warm air. Rylan gestured sharply. Down, now. They slipped off the ledge to a lower shelf. The scrape of their boots drew the creature's attention, but instead of attacking, the creatures angled toward a different tunnel. A voice echoed through the chamber. Help? Is anyone there? Alira's breath trembled. That's Holt's voice. Rylan's jaw tightened. It isn't her. The voice sharpened, louder, more desperate. Rylan, Alira, don't leave me. Alira covered her helmet with trembling hands. Make it stop. Rylan squeezed her arm. They're hunting us. Don't let them pull us apart. The creatures crawled closer, moving along the walls like silent, pale mantises. Rylan pointed across the chamber. We head for the shuttle. If we reach the engine compartment, we can overload the fuel regulator. Alira inhaled once, steadying herself. Then we moved together. They slipped down from the ledge and pressed low to the uneven ground, weaving behind jagged stone outcroppings. Above them, creatures crawled overhead, clicking softly. One let out a quiet sob. Alira's voice perfectly replicated, but neither of them turned. They reached the collapsed shuttle and took cover behind its slanted hull. Rylan inspected the lower engine housing. If I override the regulator, the pressure will spike. It should detonate. And draw every creature in the chamber, Alira said. Rylan nodded. Exactly. We need them close. A deep rumble vibrated through the ground. Creatures emerged, dozens pouring from vertical tunnels in the walls, converging in a wave of pale limbs and open jaws. Alira steadied her rifle. They're moving fast. Rylan worked the first panel open. We move faster. The creatures surged toward the crashed shuttle. Alira opened fire. Her shots cracked through the cavern, flashes of muzzle light revealing snarling, skittering shapes. A handful of creatures fell, but more poured forward, a living tide. Rylan tore open the second panel. Almost there, Alira shouted, panic rising. Rylan, hurry! A clawed hand slammed against the hull inches from her shoulder. She reacted instantly, firing point blank. The creature dropped, but two more descended from the ceiling behind her. Alira! Rylan called out. She rolled aside as a creature lunged. Rylan fired his pistol, striking it in the ribcage. The creature reeled and collapsed. Alira staggered back to her feet. They're surrounding us! Rylan ripped the final pressure lock free. The regulator screamed in alarm as the fuel tank destabilized. "It's done," he yelled. "We have 60 seconds." Alira grabbed his arm. "Then we run." They sprinted for the incline on the far side of the cavern. Creatures flooded in from every direction, driven wild by the screeching fuel system. One creature dropped from the ceiling directly ahead, jaw gaping. Alira fired into its face, knocking it backward in a spray of pale fragments. Rylan kicked a loose boulder, slamming it into the creature's legs as they ran past. Behind them, the shuttle gave a deep, thrumming roar. "It's going," Rylan shouted. "Move." They scrambled up the incline. Claws scraped the stone behind them, dozens of them, the creatures converging into a frenzied, clicking swarm. The shuttle exploded. Light and pressure roared through the chamber. A wave of fire and stone blasted upward, throwing Rylan and Alira against the tunnel wall. Their helmets cracked against rock. The shockwave rolled through every tunnel, collapsing pillars and crushing creatures beneath falling debris. Rylan lay stunned, ears ringing. Alira dragged herself upright beside him, shaking violently. The cavern behind them collapsed completely, sealing off the nest. They were alive. But the tunnel ahead stretched into darkness, and something still moved somewhere above them. Quiet, patient, waiting. Chapter 9. Rylan's Choice. The tunnel stretched ahead in suffocating darkness. Rylan kept to the front, his flashlight beam trembling across jagged stone as he forced himself to breathe steadily. Behind him, Alira limped, one hand bracing her cracked visor, the other clutching her rifle like a lifeline. The explosion's shockwave still rang in their bones. Their ears hummed with metallic static. But worse than the physical damage was the silence. Too deep, too complete, too intentional. No clicking, no mimicked voices, no scuttling above or below. Alira whispered, voice brittle, "Do you think we killed them all?" Rylan shook his head. Not all of them. He didn't say more, but the pressure in the stone told him the truth. Something had survived, something that had learned, something that now stalked them through the narrowing tunnels. A faint breeze brushed their suits, fresh air drifting from above. Rylan pointed forward. "This way." They climbed over a mound of collapsed rock, emerging into a natural dome. The space widened around them, the ceiling stretching high overhead. At the center of the room, a section of stone had collapsed entirely, revealing a narrow shaft that reached toward faint starlight. The surface. Alira let out a sob of relief. "Rylan, we're close." A clicking sound cut her off, not from the tunnel behind them, from above. Rylan slowly raised his light toward the shaft. A creature clung to the sloped stone, silhouetted against the faint glow of the outside world. Its limbs were thicker than any they had seen. Its frame was broader. It moved with slow, deliberate precision, as if confident that escape was only an illusion. The Alpha, the one that mimicked voices perfectly, the one that hunted patterns, the one that had learned their names. Alira whispered, "Oh God." The creature descended with fluid strength, claws punching into stone. It didn't hiss, it didn't shriek, it didn't need to, it had them cornered. Rylan lifted his pistol. "Stay behind me." The creature tilted its head and spoke in Holt's voice. "Rylan." Alira flinched. "Stop. Please stop." The Alpha spoke again, this time in Dimitri's voice. "Don't leave." Rylan fired. The shot grazed its shoulder. The creature leapt sideways, clinging to the wall like an enormous insect. Its jaw peeled open, teeth glinting in the flashlight beam. Alira steadied her rifle and fired a short burst. Stone erupted, filling the chamber with dust. The Alpha vanished into the haze. Rylan grabbed Alira's arm. "Climb! Now!" She obeyed immediately, scrambling toward the shaft. The incline was steep, but the air carried the scent of the surface, cold, thin, promising. Rylan climbed after her. Halfway up, the Alpha slammed into the wall beside him, claws shredding stone. Alira screamed and fired downward, bullets sparking across the rock. The creature recoiled but clung to the wall, testing angles. It lunged again. Rylan slipped, boots scraping helplessly across loose shale. He caught himself on a protruding rock. Alira reached down toward him. "Rylan, take my hand." He grabbed her wrist. A metallic clatter echoed below them. The Alpha had dropped something. Rylan glanced down. A helmet. Alira's helmet. Alira below him. He looked up. The figure holding him wasn't Alira at all. The eye sockets were empty. The jaw trembled unnaturally as the stolen voice cracked like a broken machine. "Rylan, help me." Rylan jerked his hand away instinctively. The creature snapped its jaws where his wrist had been, teeth clicking inches from him. The real Alira screamed from below. "Rylan, move!" The alpha shrieked as it dropped its disguise, limbs unfolding into their true configuration, long, jointed, predatory. Rylan braced and kicked both boots into its chest. The impact sent the alpha sliding down the shaft, ripping grooves in the stone as it fell. Alira fired down the tunnel, muzzle flashes strobing through the dust. The alpha dodged and began climbing toward her. "Alira, go!" Rylan shouted. "No, I'm not leaving you!" She cried, firing again. The creature lunged. Alira screamed as it slammed into her. They tumbled together down the slope, colliding with a sickening crash in the chamber below. Rylan slid after them, desperate and reckless. "Alira!" He landed hard, rolling to his knees beside her. Her visor was fractured, her suit torn at the shoulder. Blood streaked beneath her helmet. She was conscious only by a thread. "Rylan," she whispered. "Run." "No." He supported her head gently. "I'm not leaving you." A clicking sound vibrated through the chamber. The alpha pulled itself from dust and debris. Its limbs spread wide, posture low and predatory. Its jaw opened slowly, exhaling a trembling hiss. Rylan rose, gun shaking in his hand. Alira clutched his leg weakly. "Go." He leveled the pistol. "This ends now." The alpha lunged. Rylan fired, then fired again, then again. Rounds tore into its torso, shredding layers of pale muscle. The alpha staggered but dragged itself forward with relentless strength. Alira screamed, "Rylan!" He emptied the magazine into the creature's skull. The alpha collapsed inches from him, twitching once before falling still. Silence flooded the cavern. Rylan dropped to his knees, gasping for breath. The world blurred at the edges. Alira's breathing was shallow, fading fast. He crawled to her and held her gently. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Stay." Her lips parted. You have to go." "We're going together," he said, voice shaking. She managed the faintest smile. "Rylan, please." Her eyes closed. Her body went still. Rylan held her, refusing to let go until the cold seeped through his suit. Grief hollowed him so completely he could barely breathe. At last he rose, alone. He looked up the shaft. The exit waited above. Only one of them would reach it. Rylan climbed into the darkness, carrying her memory with him. Chapter 10. Breaking Orbit. Rylan climbed the final stretch of the shaft with numb hands and burning lungs. Every muscle in his arms trembled beneath his weight, every pull sending loose stone rattling into the dark below. He didn't dare look back. He couldn't face the emptiness where Alira had fallen or the place where the Echo Alpha had made its last stand. He focused on the single thing that mattered, the faint glow above him. A sliver of light. A promise. The surface. He dragged himself through the final choke point. Dirt rained across his visor as he pushed through, tumbling onto cold rock. Night air struck him hard. Sharp, freezing, gloriously real. For a long moment, he lay there gasping, watching starlight shimmer across the dead sky. He had never felt more grateful for the sight of desolation. A thin gust swept across the ridge, trailing dust over jagged stone. In the distance, the Horizon Rook stood on its landing struts, a dark silhouette against the horizon. "Sarah," Rylan rasped. His throat was raw. "Quinn, this is Rylan. I made it out." Static hissed through his comms, stretching long enough to make his heart sink. Then Sarah's voice burst through, frantic, breaking. "Rylan? Rylan, you're alive. We lost you. We thought..." "I'm coming to you," he said hoarsely. "Prep the ship, now." He forced himself forward in a stumbling run. His legs shook beneath him, each step painful, unsteady. The cold bit through his suit, his vision narrowed to a tunnel, but he kept moving. Sarah met him halfway, her lamp jittering wildly as she sprinted across the rock. She collided with him in a desperate embrace, armor clacking against armor, her breathing hysterical. "Rylan, where's Alira? Where's Holt? Where are the others?" He couldn't answer. Sarah saw it in his eyes. Her breath hitched. She backed away, hand covering her visor. Quinn's voice entered the comms, tight with fear. "We need to go. Now. I'm not staying in this gravity well another second." They half-supported Rylan back to the ship. Every few steps, he turned toward the fissure. Terrified he would see pale limbs crawling into the open. He saw only darkness, and that terrified him even more. Inside the Horizon Rook, Quinn sealed the airlock with trembling hands. The interior lights flickered, casting dim orange shadows across the corridor. Sarah lowered Rylan into the nearest seat and removed his helmet. Cold air stung his face. He winced. Quinn gripped the controls. "Engines online. Hold on." The deck vibrated beneath their boots as the thrusters ignited. Rylan leaned back, eyes drifting toward the ceiling. Sarah's hand settled on his shoulder, her voice barely steady. "I'm so sorry for everyone." He nodded. "You did nothing wrong." A tremor rattled the ground outside. Quinn stiffened. "What was that?" Sarah whispered. "Quinn, take us up. Right now." He didn't hesitate. The Horizon Rook lifted from the surface, swirling dust in its wake. The jagged moon landscape drifted further below with each passing second. Another tremor shook the fissure. Rylan turned toward the viewport. Then he saw it. A pale shape pulled itself from the depths, massive, towering, larger than the Alpha, its limbs stretched into impossible lengths as it climbed into the moonlight, a distorted silhouette against the dark horizon. Sarah gasped. "Quinn, faster!" Quinn slammed the thrusters forward. The ship roared upward, engines burning hot as the creature climbed the ridge like a monstrous centipede. Its body split and reformed, limbs twisting, fusing, then splitting again. It wasn't one creature. It was many, merged, a hive moving as a single mind. The Echo Titan. It leapt. The impact rocked the ship. A limb slammed into the blast shield, denting the metal and shattering a console. Sparks exploded across the cockpit. Quinn shouted, "I can't! It's dragging us!" The Titan clung to the hull, its limbs driving deep grooves into the plating. Its eyeless head pressed against the cockpit glass, mouth opening wide as it tasted the heat of their engines. Rylan grabbed Sarah's arm. "Get to the pressure valve controls." She turned to him, terrified. "What? Why?" "Do it." Sarah sprinted to the side panel and slammed the emergency override. The external fuel vents snapped open along the hull. Rylan shouted, "Quinn, burn it!" Quinn hit the ignition. A blast of flame erupted from the rear thrusters, washing over the Echo Titan in a blistering wave. The creature shrieked, the first sound any of them had ever heard from its kind. A piercing, bone-deep wail that shook the ship and rattled Rylan's chest. It lost its grip. The Titan fell, crashing into the stone below with a violent twist of limbs, before disappearing into the fissure's black maw. The Horizon Rook broke free of the moon's gravity, stabilizing as they rose into open space. Quinn slumped in his seat, panting. "We're alive! We made it!" Sarah collapsed beside Rylan, tears streaking her face. She wrapped him in a desperate embrace, shaking with relief and grief. Rylan stared out the viewport. The moon shrank into a distant, silent sphere, cold and dead once more. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He only breathed, hollow and exhausted, as the stars stretched across the void. "Set course for the nearest fleet station," he said quietly. "We need to report what happened." Quinn nodded and prepared the jump. Rylan closed his eyes and heard it, a faint whisper threading through the edges of his mind. "Rylan," he opened his eyes sharply. Sarah leaned toward him, concerned. "Rylan, what is it?" He forced a steady breath. "Nothing." But he looked back at the moon, now a distant point in the darkness. He knew better. Something had survived down there. Something that had learned their voices. Something that remembered him. And something that would one day follow. The waking terror. Rylan Graves didn't sleep for the first 48 hours after his rescue. He lay in a medical cot aboard the fleet recovery vessel Helion Mercy, monitors tracing jagged lines across the hollow screens above him. Nurses rotated through with quiet efficiency. A therapist asked gentle questions he refused to answer. Sarah visited once, sitting beside him for nearly 2 hours in silence. She left when she realized he wasn't going to look at her. The doctors called it shock, trauma, survivor's paralysis. Rylan called it something else. Listening. Somewhere inside the hum of the ship's engines, there were distortions he couldn't ignore. Small vibrations, uneven breaths of air pushing through the vents. A faint cadence buried beneath static whenever the ship adjusted course. He lay still, staring at the ceiling, heart tightening whenever the sound returned. A whisper. Thin, fragile, barely audible. Rylan, he squeezed his eyes shut. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But the whisper came again. "Don't leave," Dimitri's voice this time. Then Jace's, then Holt's, then Alira's. Their tones shifted like a broken choir, fading into one another with sickening ease. He pressed his palms against his ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't carried through the room. It vibrated behind his skull, a memory echoing through the darkest parts of him. The door hissed open. Fleet Commander Rhea Avalon stepped inside, uniform immaculate even at this late hour. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Graves," she said gently, We've reviewed your recordings, the flight data, the damage to the Horizon Rook. Rylan didn't move. Ria's voice softened. We believe your account, all of it. We're sealing the moon's coordinates under Class Omega clearance. No one will land there again. Rylan finally turned his head. It won't matter, he murmured. Ria frowned. Why wouldn't it? Rylan's eyes reflected the dim medbay glow, hollow, exhausted, haunted. They can climb, he whispered, and they can learn, and they can wait. Ria opened her mouth, but a sharp chime cut through the room. She tapped her wrist console, brows tightening. Your suit recorder just triggered a signal spike. Rylan sat up too fast, alarms screaming as his monitors spiked. A spike? From what? Ria turned the display toward him. A tiny waveform pulsed against a field of static, faint, barely registering, but undeniably present. A voice imprint, one word. Rylan, Ria exhaled. Probably residual memory from your damaged helmet, a corrupted file. Rylan stared, breath thinning, because the voice wasn't Holt's or Dimitri's, or Alira's. It was his. Soft, desperate, recent. Ria's voice dipped in concern. Rylan? He didn't answer. The waveform pulsed again, his own voice, trembling. Help me. Ria cleared the screen and stepped back. Get some rest. We'll run diagnostics tomorrow. She left him in the dimmed med bay. The engines hummed like distant thunder. Rylan curled beneath the blankets and clutched the edges until his knuckles whitened. The whisper came again through the vents, clearer this time, as though the voice had learned the shape of his name. Rylan. He didn't cover his ears. He didn't look away. He listened. A single tear slipped down his cheek, and somewhere far beyond the Helion Mercy, drifting in the cold geometry of deep space, something whispered his name again. Closer. You've been listening to Void Harvest, a sleep theater radio story. A descent into the silent corners of deep space, where echoes cling to the stone long after the voices that made them have faded, and where survival sometimes follows you home. As the rain falls gently outside your window and the low roll of distant thunder settles your breathing, let your mind drift away from the shadows Rylan left behind. Whatever still whispers his name out there in the dark cannot reach you here. Not tonight. Not beneath the safety of the storm. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this tale, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps Sleep Theater Radio alive, bringing new cinematic stories to accompany the calming rhythm of rain and thunder. Until next time, sleep well and stay far from the dark.